Mark Pond. I'm the business research librarian for the Spokane Public Library and also run and manage the Startup Spokane program.
Okay, so business reference librarian, I don't know how many people know how many hats you wear, but one of them is Startup Spokane. So let's start with that. Just give me a rundown of what that is. And that's kind of the idea, is to have you come maybe once a year and share with everybody how awesome the library is. And one of those programs is Startup Spokane.
Yeah, well, I don't know how far back you want to go, but Alan and Bill,
that's right.
Yeah, back in the day, starting up Launchpad, which then handed that off to GSI. GSI kind of morphed it into Startup Spokane. I was involved with that for, since the inception. But then COVID hit, and also funding for Startup Spokane kind of dried up at about the same, within the same 3-day period. So it was just kind of lying dormant for a number of years, and then just almost a year ago, the library took it over as a library-run program. So Startup Spokane, just aiming to be kind of the front door for all entrepreneurial activity around town, so that folks who are interested in starting a business or even have a business up and running for sometimes decades, they can come in, get access to some tools and resources and connections around town. And specifically some of the tools, what we're aiming to do there is go after really top shelf, really expensive stuff that's really valuable for businesses, but they might not be able to justify the cost on their own.
So the idea being, I'm either an entrepreneur or small business owner, and I'll be brutally honest with you, I've been teaching a course, small business management, and I just had this conversation with my students. If you look up the definitions, there's really no difference between the two. I think the idea with entrepreneurs is we tend to associate them with more tech or flashy kind of business ideas, but at the end of the day, they both involve assuming risk for a business and taking that on. But your idea is to, with Startup Spokane, you kind of mentioned this, is to be like a jumping off point, right? Is to be a place where if I don't really know where to go, I can start with Startup Spokane and kind of figure out what are the resources available. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think is reasonable way to encapsulate it. Yeah.
So does that include pointing people to maybe other resources that are outside the library at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So beyond just kind of the library things that we subscribe to, one, kind of my great white whale that I've been chasing around for a number of years is the shared business events calendar.
Oh yeah.
I have a list of, I think it's 42 different calendars around town of organizations that offer business events of one type or another, and it's a mess. And especially for folks who are new to town, and they happen to find their way to me and they're like, hey, how do I get plugged into the Spokane business scene? And I'm like, well, awkwardly, here's a list of calendars to go check. So of those 40-some calendars, we have 9 scrapers built so far, dumping them all onto the startup calendar.
Nice.
So it's still kind of beta stage, still baby steps, but we're making progress.
Let's pretend that one of those 42 different calendars, somebody who operates or runs that is tuning in or is here in the room. If they want to ensure that their calendar is on there, can they just reach out to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shoot me an email. I'll make sure that it's on the list. Sometimes there are some organizations where they have an event maybe once every 6 months, and building an entire scraper to, taking the 5 to 10 hours to do that might not make the most sense. So on the calendar site, there is a place to just submit
an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did get a question online through LinkedIn, because we're live on LinkedIn, that they're just confirmation, where do I find that calendar?
Startupspokane.com, and then there are some kind of buttons across the top of the page. Events is the one that you want to go to.
Okay, so with Startup Spokane, beyond being this place to find a shared calendar of maybe all the businessy kind of things happening, and beyond being a jumping off point for resources and tools, are you offering anything else? Is there any other programming we should be aware of that comes through Startup Spokane, or is that kind of the pinnacle?
Yeah, it's still on the list. Christopher.
Oh, you gotta wait for the mic. Sorry, it's new.
Is one of the events, are you hosting the Startup Weekend?
Involved with it.
Okay.
So Ignite, they're kind of the primary sponsor, cheerleader, I'm not sure what the term is, but pusher of that event. But definitely we're involved with it, as is, Launchpad and any number of organizations around town. So
And
that's
that's kind
definitely going to be on the calendar.
And that's kind of the challenge, right? You've got whether it's Ignite or Launchpad coming back, or any of these other maybe innovation clusters, or any other resources from SBA funded resources like SCORE and SBDC, even SNAP. You have all these people who are trying to help small businesses and entrepreneurs, but it's like, where do I go, right? And who's the best fit, right? Is that kind of what the gap you're trying to come in and say, hey, you start here, and we'll help you figure it out.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And I've been in my role as business librarian since 2006, and I feel like I just now am kind of getting a handle on
well, and it doesn't help that people
who does
are changing,
what,
yeah,
and who best to refer whom to, whatever the correct English usage is there. But trying to figure that whole ecosystem out, asking startups to figure it out on their own from scratch it's a big ask.
Especially when they're, being a small business owner or an entrepreneur, you're already doing a lot of things, you're already wearing a lot of hats. And I think for most of those people, you're like, I gotta find the answer now. Right. And it becomes difficult when I have to spend an hour just trying to figure out where to go, right? Whether it's I need funding or I just need help with this one part or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say somebody is not a NGO or government-based thing, and they're just a business that likes working with other small businesses or entrepreneurs. Is there a spot for them to get plugged in? Do you have like a referral partner thing going on with Startup Spokane?
Yes.
Okay.
So on the Startup Spokane page, one of the buttons across the top of the page is the Team Up Mentors, which I might change that from mentors to more like advisors, or I think mentors implies like you're entering into some 6-year relationship here, and that's not the vibe that I'm shooting for. But under that tab, a number of different businesses around town who have some subject matter expertise in working with businesses of one stripe or another. And the idea there is that those businesses listed on the startup page, they're definitely looking for paid clients a little bit further down the road, but also they've raised their hands and said, yeah, we're happy to work with anyone who comes through the startup program. We'll definitely do a free consultation, see if we can get them pointed in the right direction. And then if it becomes a paid client relationship after that, hooray, great.
Because there are other organizations that already offer that free mentoring kind of thing. I mentioned SCORE and SBDC, they kind of fill that gap. So it makes sense that you have something a little different where maybe it's a free consultation, but the idea is these are paid service providers that you might want to engage at some point. Okay. Yeah. Anything else that we need to know about Startup Spokane specifically that we haven't talked about yet beyond the resources? Because we're dog-earing that for a minute.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess one other thing worth calling out, and it's not specific just to Startup Spokane, but I should mention it because this organization, the WSMA, the Washington State Micro Enterprise Association, they support business support organizations around the state, and they helped, they gave us a grant that allowed us to redo the website, and so that was a good, it was like a $32,000 grant that they gave us for redoing the website and kind of getting that cleaned up and freshened up. But WSMA, they also have a site that's called Evergreen BizLink.
Oh, that's right. You've mentioned that before.
And the name kind of kills me. Anything with biz and link as the name of the website, it just seems like we're transported back to like 2002.
I was gonna say, I don't think I'm old, but I am internet old, and I remember when like .biz was available, and everyone's like, ooh, and you're like, no.
Yeah. So anyway, that issue aside, which makes it kind of cute and quaint, I guess is one way to look at it. But they're just getting up and running right now, and Evergreen BizLink is aiming to be the statewide directory of all governmental, nonprofit, and or educational organizations around the state that provide free business assistance.
Okay.
And they've got an amazing filter where you can go and say, I'm in 99205 zip code, I need help with import and export issues, and just select what the topics are that you're trying to figure out. And then when you run the search, it'll do this expanding radius across the state saying, oh, here are the organizations that can help you with that for free.
I think the thing to point out, or at least acknowledge here, is that there are organizations trying to do this work of coalescing everything that's happening. It's just making sure people know about it, right? From Evergreen BizLink to Startup Spokane, there are places where people can go and get started. It's just, how do I find that, right?
Right.
So, okay, excellent. And then Startup Spokane, I know we've talked about small businesses and entrepreneurs, but there are also some nonprofit resources available, right? So you can support those as well. If they're like a fledgling nonprofit,
totally.
You can get support for that too.
Yep, that falls under the banner.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
I know that with your digital resources, and some have to be used in-house, so at the library, and some can be used with remote access as long as you have a library card. You've got this wide variety of tools that are available to people. So let's talk through some of your favorites.
Okay. Specifically nonprofit?
No,
stuff?
just in general. But we should talk about the nonprofit ones too.
Okay.
So just, we'll talk about that too. I'll try to remember.
Yeah. I think, well, before we went live, we were talking about Bloomberg. Bloomberg is, we've had it since 2016, and it's been us, New York Public, and then recently Boston Public Library. We're the 3 public libraries that have had access to it. So got it in 2016, and at the very least, it allowed us to firmly plant a flag in the ground saying, hey, we're here, we're not messing around, we're going for good stuff. And kind of the way that Bloomberg hit my radar was I spent, I want to say from like 2012 to like through 2013, I put together a list of all of the top 50 MBA programs around the nation. And then I went through each one of those programs' library offerings.
Yeah.
What does Harvard offer for their, Harvard Library offer for their MBA programs? And I put together this magnum opus spreadsheet of all these programs, what are the resources that they use to support those programs, and then kind of sifted and sorted to figure out what could be a fit for us budget-wise and then also usage-wise. And so Bloomberg was one of the ones that immediately popped to the top.
Kept showing up.
And I thought, okay, all right, it's kind of a stretch for us, but also if we live in the information age and we don't our community doesn't have access to top shelf information, that's like living in Iron Age, but only having access to stone or wood, and that doesn't work out well for those communities. So, so that was kind of the thing that I was looking at there. But just as of like 48 hours ago, I just pulled the cord on Bloomberg.
What could I get from that as a resource, just so if somebody doesn't know, what was available through the Bloomberg resource?
Yeah, so it's if you've ever watched any Wall Street movie with multiple screens, stock data flashing around, that's a Bloomberg terminal. And I used it less for kind of the stock research stuff. I mean, definitely have and had users using it for that, but more my application was, there was a little corner of the Bloomberg terminal called Bloomberg Intelligence, which is where Bloomberg has their staff of a couple thousand analysts around the globe just sifting through data, writing reports, and it was amazing. Being able to drill in to say, actually with WSU's pharmacy program, one of the questions that came my way, they were trying to figure out what drug manufacturer had what percentage of market share for some specific medication or for some particular disease type. And I was like, I don't know, but started digging into Bloomberg and found it broken down. You could break it down by retail pharmacy prescriptions that were filled versus institutional hospital type of setting. Break it down by month, how many prescriptions were filled, what was the total transaction, what was the total dollar amount for those prescriptions, and who was the manufacturer of which individual drug. Dump that into a spreadsheet, and it's that sort of stuff where you can throw Google searches at the wall all day long
and not come up.
Not get anywhere close to that.
Okay, so how much longer do you have access to that? So if anybody's like, that sounds right up my alley, I got to run in there and get access, because that's an on-site only.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long?
We are down to 58 days now.
Okay.
It's a 60-day window that we had to give them. So
58 days. All right.
Yeah.
So, get in there.
Right.
You might have this line of people.
Right.
Bloomberg.
Right.
All right. So what's next? What's another resource that you love that you have access to?
Yeah, another pretty unique one that actually I feel like we get more bang for our buck out of it is PitchBook. And we're the only public library in the known universe that has access to PitchBook. And and it's partly, well, maybe I'll come back to that piece next, but PitchBook, if you haven't encountered it, it's basically just database of companies that have raised private capital. So angel investing, venture capital, private equity types of deals. So you can either search for those companies that have raised capital or basically flip the search on its head and search for the investors in those companies. So it's pretty amazing to be able to say, all right, I'm looking for companies that are in the ag tech space here on the West Coast that have raised at least $1 million in the last 6 months, and boom, there's the list of companies with phone numbers, email contact, LinkedIn profiles of not just the founders or the CEOs, but who's on their team, who sits on their board, and then you can click over to the investment side and see who's invested in that particular company. So
that's crazy.
It's a whole web of data.
So if you're like that classic startup and you're looking to raise capital through VCs or angel investors or whatever, that sounds like a top shelf resource.
Yeah.
Because it helps you do research on what's out there, what's happening, who's getting what.
Exactly. Yeah, and being able to see cap tables, how much equity did companies have to give up to raise a certain amount of money. So it gets used for kind of trying to judge and estimate valuation, but also, is this a reasonable deal that I'm getting
I was going to
into?
say, somebody mentioned Startup Weekend, which is the idea of coming and pitching an idea, and the best ideas get worked on over the course of a weekend. And I think the final, they win some money, right? So, but you want to be aware, so say you're one of those companies and you have this great idea and you win, are they offering you a good deal? If somebody else comes up and says, hey, I really think you have something here, I'd love to invest. If you're green, you don't know anything about it, it's a really great way to go, okay, is this a sound deal? Or, am I getting taken advantage of?
Right, yeah. Am I giving up 55% of my company for $5,000?
Right.
Like,
so it's like a shortcut. You don't have to watch hours of Shark Tank to kind of figure out whether or not this is a good deal. Yeah, we got a question. Christopher, do you want to hand the mic over?
If I'm not mistaken, when this first started, when you say people are looking for investors, it also filters it to investors who focus in that particular area.
Absolutely.
So you can do some research on maybe who might be willing to invest in your idea or project.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great
So
question.
you can narrow it down to say, all right, who are the investors in some particular industry or vertical that routinely show up? And so there are any number of ways that PitchBook gets used. There's a woman here in town. She's got a biotech background, but she does a lot of consulting in the biotech space. She uses PitchBook a ton for just
I know who you're talking about. I don't know if we have freedom to mention that, but let's just say we shared person.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Someone you would know.
Yeah.
And so she uses that for just kind of sales lead development type of approach of like, who are the biotech
I was gonna say, so
companies?
that one didn't feel super applicable to maybe the classic small business, like I'm a mechanic or whatever. But if you're a small business that's more services based, like I am, marketing, and maybe you do biotech or product development consulting, it's a great way to, like you said, do some business development. I mean, they're obviously cold leads, but you can at least see what companies are getting funded and maybe who needs that kind of support, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Another example, woman here in town, she's in the hospitality restaurant industry, and she does consulting in that space, especially for folks who are just looking to get a restaurant up and running.
Got it.
And she has a really interesting approach where she's like, restaurants seem to think that they need the big gas range with the big hood, and she's like, induction. You can go induction cooktop, it's significantly cheaper, and you don't have to deal with these massive hoods, which is often the biggest kind of
Yeah,
infrastructure that you have
big
to
expense.
shell out. And so using PitchBook, we could say, hey, here are the investors in ghost kitchens. There they are.
Ghost
And
kitchens. Now you have to tell people what that is. Like
basically just an online presence where you go place your order at
so they don't have like a
Joe's.
storefront. Like
Right.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Yep. Basically, your food just shows up.
So like what Chuck E. Cheese did during the pandemic, where they renamed
Okay.
their thing and then they were doing delivery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
about
That's
that.
Yep.
In
yeah,
one-
and they're
yeah.
all So
Yeah.
okay, excellent, fantastic.
So another example there. So PitchBook, I should mention though. So this is our 6th year of having a license to it, and it's $20,000 a year for a subscription. So 0 mom and pop startups are going to shell that out to pay for that. But in the 6 years that we've had our license, we've paid 0 out of the library's budget for it because we've been able to kind of crowdsource it because WSU wants it, Vista wants it,
Yeah, they do.
SSA wants
They
it.
should. Vista should just be paying for it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, Spokane, we're just this Goldilocks-sized community where we're
Yeah.
big enough to have these organizations and individuals and entities that want this type of information, but we're not so big that we're a threat to PitchBook's sales team.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I work for Seattle Public Library, and PitchBook is headquartered just directly across the street from the Seattle Public Library, their downtown branch. And when we got our license lined up, I called my old coworkers and then did a little victory dance. I'm like, hey, guess who just got a PitchBook license? And Jay, my counterpart with Seattle Public, he's like, we've had that conversation multiple times, and it stalls out with their VP of sales, where they're like, Seattle Public Library? Free public access to PitchBook in the Seattle market?
In the Seattle market. It's
Absolutely
actually the
not.
perfect place for them to be located, because if they were located anywhere else, they're like, what's a Spokane? But in Seattle, they're like, oh, Spokane.
Right.
And you're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's our win.
Yeah, and the sales rep that I got hooked up with, his sister was going to Gonzaga,
Nice.
and he's like, oh, I love Spokane. So
Perfect.
So we're big enough to piece it together,
Yeah.
but we're small, but not Ritzville small.
Take him to the Spokane or the Gonzaga game.
Did you?
No.
Yeah. The question. Yeah. Did you have to take them to a Gonzaga game?
No, isn't it supposed to flow the other way?
Yeah.
Where
Right. Yeah.
I'm the client.
Yes,
They're
that's
supposed
right.
to
They
take
should be
me.
taking you.
Yeah.
They should have box seats.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about, because I mean, you and I have worked together for a number of years. We know each other pretty well, and I'm aware of a lot of the resources you have. But I would love to talk about one that's like a small business. So I am that classic, like I'm a mechanic or I'm a bakery. I'm a tried and true business model. What are some of the resources that you have available that would help that kind of a business out?
Sure. Yep. Just working with a woman yesterday. She does amazing photography and then photoshopping of the work that she does. She has a really specific niche in doing Santa photos
Oh.
because it turns out her husband is a ringer for Santa. And so she's got her on-site Santa all day, every day. But she has this amazing artwork that she does, but she's trying to figure out how do I sell this? Where do I go?
Yeah.
And so just kind of spitballing with her of like, okay, places like Atticus, where they're looking for, they kind of curate a certain thing. It's
Right.
not just you walk in and it's stuff that you can find at Target.
Right.
So it's kind of unique, a little quirky, but also really high quality stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, here, we can use Data Axle, one of the databases that we subscribe to. It's our primary business directory. And we could say, all right, in Spokane and Kootenai County, here are the 300 and some coffee shops
Right.
around the region. And we should add
Brew peddler to that, right?
Brew peddler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one concrete example of, from 24 hours ago where she's like, oh, that's super helpful because she can download that list, dump it into a spreadsheet, and then it's basically her just contact list.
Right. Reaching out.
And she can just go through and start knocking on doors. And then she was like, yeah, I've been throwing searches at Google and then trying to copy and paste results into a Word document, and that's clunky.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So
So if
that
I was
would be
trying,
one.
so if I was like a restaurant or coffee shop or whatever, and I'm trying to find a good location, there's some tools where I could even look at some like maybe competitors on a map, or even look at population density to see if I'm in a good location that makes sense because it's either a walkable neighborhood or there's enough people there, right? I mean, I could sort that out, right?
Yeah. So site location stuff. So data axle.
Yeah.
We could map where those coffee shops are, put them on a map. And second tool, we have a license to CoStar, which they're the owner of LoopNet. I don't know, you may have bumped into that, but basically CoStar, they're trying to be kind of like the Zillow of commercial real estate, which doesn't quite exist. I don't understand the commercial real estate world.
It's super weird,
It's
man. It's
very
like they want
opaque.
it to be weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
wife started a nonprofit gymnastics club, and we were looking for space. It's smoke and mirrors, man.
Yeah.
It's weird. And that's no offense. I love commercial realtors, but that whole world, it's not like real estate, right? Where you
Right.
can just go, here, I want to see all the homes for sale. No, it's not at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So CoStar is trying to solve that.
Okay,
And make
excellent.
it a little bit more transparent, and so so that's definitely a tool that gets used a lot for site location types of questions of what are the buildings that are out there. Then third, if you're in the B to C world, then Demographics Now.
Yeah. Is that the one that's maybe getting sunsetted?
It is.
Oh man.
Yeah, at the end of the year.
Okay.
Which, so we've got a little bit of runway to work with, but I've been looking for replacements for Demographics Now, which there's one called Placer.ai.
Oh, that's right. We've talked about that.
Which does a lot of the same things that Demographics Now does in terms of just straight demographic, age, income.
Right.
all
So if you
those
want to
sorts of things.
know all the people in your neighborhood that are between 20 and 30, you can figure that out, right?
Yeah, or at least raw numbers.
Right, raw, not
Yeah.
the actual people.
Yeah.
And I have to
Actually, Data Axle.
Yeah,
allows
well,
you to-
okay. So that's why I always make this disclaimer that as people, as consumers, we have to take off that hat that freaks me out. I don't like that. That seems really big brothery, and we have to put on our business owner, marketer hat, and go, this is great data. So we acknowledge two things can be true at the same time.
Right.
That creeps me out, and this is also helpful, right?
Right.
So we have to just be okay with that.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I definitely have some kind of Jekyll and Hyde reactions to some of the data that we have access to, where I'm just like, dang, business librarian Mark, I get. Oops, sorry, I'm thumping my microphone. Sorry, Nathan. I get pretty excited about this stuff because it's super valuable and really helpful. Personal private Mark, I cringe a little bit. Yeah. Where I'm just like, dang. But the way that I'm able to sleep at night is I figure, okay, if there's some organization or person out there with deep enough corporate pockets, they've got access to this stuff.
Yeah.
So if the library can step in and kind of democratize the access to this type of information, it loses some of its power. Seems
but
like
isn't
it's
that a little
really
like
powerful.
somebody knocked off an armored car and it's driving down and bills are flying out of it and you're grabbing some of the bills? Like, you didn't steal it, but you just happen to be the beneficiary. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a poor analogy.
Sure.
Not wrong.
I'd keep that money.
Okay, there you go. All right, so
Maybe.
I
I
know
don't know.
we've got Samuel here, and he's with, so you're gonna have to remind me, what kind of martial arts? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Okay, so if I wanted to know maybe how many households have maybe done some kind of martial arts, is that like information that would be available to me? Could I see maybe some broad indicators like that?
We can see, short answer, yes.
Okay.
In terms of just kind of likelihood.
Okay,
of
yeah,
engaging.
likelihood, okay.
Yeah, so within Demographics Now and also Placer.ai, you can see, all right, by particular household type, how likely are they to engage in martial arts? And it's usually put in kind of like an index score format of 100 would be average for participation rates across all household types. So if you've got a household type that scores, 125, they're 25% more likely than average to engage in that.
So if he was looking to open like a second location, he could maybe look around and go, oh, hey, like this is a great neighborhood that maybe needs this because there's a high likelihood that they would be interested in that.
And if this subscription to Placer, if it gels, the step that Placer would allow us to do is basically put a geofence around say, a martial arts studio anywhere in the nation and say, oh, there's this really cool business in Omaha, and they're just killing it.
Yeah.
I love what they do. You can draw a line around it and say, all right, over the last week, what household types show up here?
Oh, so you could like reverse engineer it and
Yeah.
go, I know of, Andrew and I, he's with Brew Peddler, we had some of the same conversation, I know you did too with him, which is, like what coffee shops are doing well, and maybe what coffee shops are crushing it, and what are they doing, that we can maybe emulate and replicate. And this sounds like we could kind of reverse engineer some of that information and go, oh, they seem to be targeting these households or these kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it has tons of application because you can do it, say, for all of downtown Spokane over Hoop Fest.
Yeah.
Like, what types of households show up here over this 72-hour window compared to, just standard weekend?
Yeah. And then I know the other thing that it'll do is it'll tell you things like, this household seems to have that high likelihood, right? Maybe they're 125 or whatever to be somebody who buys this or takes part in this kind of thing, whether it's martial arts or coffee or whatever. It'll also tell you their preferred ways to be marketed to, right? Like it'll give you some indication of whether they want direct mail or they want email or they want social media. Right. So you can kind of go, oh, I have these advertising dollars and maybe they're really limited. I want to be really targeted in what I do. Based on the data, it seems like this is the right path, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting information to have.
Yeah. / creepy.
/ creepy, yeah. All right, give me one more, because I want to talk about nonprofits, and I know you have some tools that are specific to them. But give me one more of your favorite small businessy kind of databases or tools that you have available that we can take advantage of.
Yeah. It's like trying to name your favorite child.
I know.
You don't want to do it in public,
Right.
but behind doors. So.
Yeah, but they don't have feelings. No,
Right.
I'm just kidding. I mean, your kids do, not the databases. I'm not a monster.
They can't feel anything.
No, they don't know.
I don't think that this one actually gets as much use as some of the other ones, but it's one of my favorites in terms of, I think, setting up businesses on the right foot.
Okay.
And it's Legal GPS.
Oh.
And basically it just walks folks through the process of setting up an LLC.
Okay.
And I am constantly shocked and amazed by people's either ability to just take on risk and sleep soundly at night, or just completely ignore it and have no idea what they might be stumbling into.
You're talking about I start a business and I keep it as a sole proprietorship versus setting up an LLC and giving myself that legal protection.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was working with a woman a couple weeks ago. She's a dietitian, and she's got this super cool idea that she's working on that front. But her mom started up an adult family home years ago. Her mom has since passed away. Now this woman that I've been working with, she runs this adult family home. And I mentioned just in passing something about, oh yeah, your LLC, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, no, the adult family home, my mom just set it up as a sole prop, and that's what I'm still doing. And anyway, about this dietitian thing, and I was like, whoa, stop.
Yeah, pump the brakes.
You've got senior citizens staggering around your home, living there.
Mm-hmm.
You're one slip and fall and a
Yeah.
broken hip away from really awkward
Yeah.
situation. Please, for the love of all that is good in the world,
Yeah.
take 20 minutes today and just start getting that LLC
Get transferred over.
set
I think,
up.
and we're not attorneys, right?
Right,
Legal
exactly.
advice
Thank
is
you.
not our
That's our
thing.
thing. Right.
But the other thing it does is locally, you want to be in an LLC. The state doesn't, the state has that designation. The IRS ultimately doesn't care. You can be an LLC that gets taxed like a sole proprietorship. So it's there's still that benefit if that's what somebody wants. And maybe it's a little bit more of a business license fee at the beginning, but honestly, it pays dividends down the road, right? It just gives you that protection so you can sleep at night, right?
Yeah, I think of it as just really cheap insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if folks they're like, legal stuff, I just don't feel comfortable navigating that world. Gonzaga's Business Innovation Clinic, it's second and third year law students that provide free business legal assistance. for free. And setting up LLCs, that's their wheelhouse.
Yeah. What was that one? Sorry.
So, Gonzaga Business Innovation Clinic.
We love naming stuff, don't we?
Yeah, Gonzaga Law School Business Innovation. I can't remember. It has Business Innovation Clinic somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. All right, so we have a few minutes left. That sounds like a great resource. I think we were talking a lot more on research and whether that has marketing implications or business development implications. But it is important to know there are some legal things to consider when you're starting a business, and having access to something like legal GPS seems like a really great thing, especially if it's going to walk you through something that can be a pretty tricky process. Right. My brothers and I just started an LLC, and it'd been 10 years plus since I had started one. And honestly, I'll just throw this out there. I remembered I had to register with the Secretary of State, but when I had done it, it was kind of like you did it in one place. And now you had to go Secretary of State, and then you still had to go to the Department of Licensing and register there. And then that's not to mention going and registering with the IRS and doing all those things. So there are some complicated steps that maybe aren't easy to find and sort out. So it's nice to have a resource that help you walk through that.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about nonprofits, only because I know you have some resources that are really great for them. And maybe there's somebody who does B2C, or maybe there's a sole prop or an individual that likes working with nonprofits. So I think it's good to mention this resource. So what are some of the things you have available for nonprofits?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of the tools that we have, they slide back and forth between the for-profit and nonprofit world, but specifically nonprofit stuff. Two things. One, have license to GuideStar, which you may have bumped into that just kind of in online wanderings. Basically, it's just directory of nonprofits.
Yeah.
But allows you to say, all right, here in Spokane or Northern Idaho or in North Dakota, who are all the nonprofits? And when I just put in a search for, I think it's Spokane County nonprofits, we have like 4,500
Oh my gosh.
of them that pop up. Yeah, and that's including like PTAs and churches, and so it's capturing kind of the broad swath. But there's a lot of them out there. But then GuideStar allows you to say, all right, I only want to focus on those that are working on housing or education issues.
Sure.
And I want to see those that have annual revenue of at least $250,000.
Right.
And then really be able to take kind of a deep dive into their finances, because it all gets reported to the IRS.
Yeah.
So they are able to put together a pretty amazing snapshot of kind of the fiscal performance of nonprofits.
Nice.
Around the region and the country. So that's one. And then the same organization that owns GuideStar, they also own the Foundation Directory online. And that's our primary grants research database. So basically, it allows you to go in and say, yeah, I'm looking for grant funding for, food security issues, and I want the dollars to be spent here in Spokane County. Click the search button, then you get the list of a couple dozen funders around the nation who have funded food security issues here in Spokane.
Yeah.
And see grant amounts, who they gave it to, when. So
if you're a nonprofit, you can kind of figure out who's been funding similar nonprofits, so you know where to maybe go and how to target your grant efforts.
Yep. Yeah, and being able to do that quick triage when you find a potential funder, when you click in on it, it'll give you this really nice snapshot of what are the subject areas that funder funds. Yeah. And if your particular topic happened to hit the radar, but it's like way down at the bottom of their list of priorities, you might say, okay, only so many hours in the day to fill out grant applications. Let's maybe put that on the B list. Yeah. And then geographically, you can zero in and say, oh, well, crap, 99% of their funding goes to Arizona. We just somehow landed with a grant here in Spokane one time 6 years ago. And then again,
is that viable?
Yeah, kind of push that to the side.
So we talked about early on, so I want to come back and maybe revisit some of these. That some of these are available online access if you have a library card number. Some of them aren't.
Correct.
So I just want to hit that up. Bloomberg, in person only in the library.
Correct. At the Central Library.
Central Library. Okay, so downtown location. PitchBook.
Same thing. PitchBook, though, it's basically just a single seat license.
Okay.
And I had to promise PitchBook that I'd be the sole keeper of the login
Okay,
credentials.
so we got to work with you.
Folks need to set up a time to work with me. It's
Excellent.
Kind of it's a pain for everyone else, but job security.
Yeah, but
for
there you
me.
go. Yep. Because they can't get Data, Axle, and Demographics Now. Those are online. Right?
Online with a library card.
Yep.
From the beach in Maui.
Yeah.
Wherever you've got internet.
Okay.
Library
CoStar.
like PitchBook.
Okay.
I have to be the
You have to be
gatekeeper.
this. Okay.
Yeah.
Legal GPS.
Online from wherever.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Just have to go through the library site as
Okay.
the authentication.
GuideStar and Foundation Directory.
For Spokane Public Library, it's at our central downtown branch. For the county library district, though, they have it available at all of their branches.
And that's important to know is that Startup Spokane, you do have a good relationship with the county library, and they have some of the
Yeah.
same resources, and maybe they have something that's different. So it's good to know that you're not. It's co-opetition, right? You're kind of getting along with each other.
Exactly.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And actually, on the startup site, it says kind of the tagline is powered by your local libraries. Well,
Yeah, so both.
Spokane Public and
Okay.
the county. Because one of the things that we were aiming to do when we took over the startup program is trying to, historically it had been pretty much just a downtown-centric type of program. And so trying to work with the county library district to push some of the programs and events and classes
Yeah.
out to the kind of the more rural regions around
Okay.
the county.
I have one last question, and we
Okay.
have plenty of time.
Okay.
Downtown Library Central has a pretty unique little space that's available. So do you want to talk about that? I can't remember. Is it the business center? What do we call it?
Business lab. Is
Business
what's on-
lab.
is
There we
what's
go.
on the
Okay, so
window.
talk
Yeah.
about that. Tell us
Yeah.
what that is, and maybe what benefit that is to a small business owner or entrepreneur.
Yeah. Co-working space
There you go.
for free.
For free. But they have to connect with you, right?
Yeah.
It does have like a keypad.
It does have keypad access,
Okay.
and I have to get a code generated for folks. But we have, I think I'm up to over 250 folks with
Access?
key code access. And
But it's not
some-
like packed, right? Like if I go in
It
there,
isn't.
I can
I'm-
probably find a station to sit at and work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
and I'm definitely looking for extra warm bodies to
Oh, okay.
come in and
Yeah.
occupy it. 'Cause
Awesome.
I've got kind of a handful of folks that are either daily or like every other day
Yeah.
users, and then it's kind of a long tail from there where it might be somebody who's just like, yeah, I'm downtown once a month, and it's nice to have
that.
a place to kind of go set up camp and
I don't use it often, but I find when I'm downtown and if I end up like with time to kill between meetings and I don't want to repark or I don't want to, it's a good place to walk into, and I know I'm going to get a dedicated desk and good Wi-Fi and that whole thing, and it'll be,
Yep.
it's a nice spot for that. Like
Yeah.
that's when I like to use it.
yeah, and we've got dual screen setup, so you can plug a
Plug in
laptop
and-
in, then you get that going. And also, there's a small meeting room that you can book.
Yeah.
That can seat up to 5 comfortably, 6 in a pinch, but with a big screen display that you can plug into. So if you've got some client meeting downtown and you're like, well, Starbucks is great, but sometimes shouting over
Yeah.
the ambient noise is
Yeah.
maybe not what you're looking for.
And there are some other event rooms in Central and in all the libraries throughout your system, right? So that's another resource. I know there's some conditions with those, but they can always just contact you and maybe you point them in the right direction. And then also we have the Hive where we're at, which has
Right.
some great rooms and locations.
Yeah.
There's also one more thing I wanted to mention, and then it just flew right out the window, and I knew it was going to happen, but it took the whole hour for this to happen.
Yeah.
Was
it
podcast rooms.
Okay,
You have
that
podcast rooms at Central
Yes.
too, right? And those
Correct.
are free to use. Just got to
Yep.
book them online. Is that?
Yep, just book them
Talk
online.
about those for just a second. I know not every
Yeah.
podcast is the new blog. I don't know,
Right.
and I've heard that not having a podcast is the new having a podcast. So jury's out, but whatever. If you're into that, you need that capability. What do you have available at the
Yeah.
library?
So up on the 3rd floor, room with best view of the river
Yeah.
in all of downtown, where we've got our stage and great for big public events. But right next to that, so we've got the podcast studio. And again, this kind of gets out of my technical expertise area, but I am told great equipment.
Great. Yeah. See, there you
Yeah.
go. Rumor is.
Rumor is.
Legend has
yeah.
it.
Folks who seem to know podcasting, they walk in and they're like, dang,
Okay.
yeah, those mics, they're legit.
Okay.
You didn't just like go cheap
Yeah.
on Amazon.
Andrew, you got to have the mic, buddy. Yeah, we'll open it. I mean, we can take questions the whole time, but we've got a few minutes for anything extra. Go ahead.
Okay. You guys have a music studio as well, kind of a side note here.
Yes.
Maybe not business related, but just curious.
Yeah. So the recording studio, two doors down from the podcast studio. Again, it's legit.
Well, I mean, if I wanted to record a jingle, right, for my
Totally.
business, now I have a place where I can do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that most folks, and even I, had kind of in my mind when we're talking about putting in a recording studio, I was like, yeah, recording studio, public library, it's probably going to be like a space like this, where you can fit maybe 2 guys and a guitar. It's the full legit, think of like big plate glass window with the massive control board.
Ooh.
And in the studio itself, we've got 3 isolation rooms, so you can have drum kit in one room, and then
Is there a drum kit on site? Or do we
there
have to-
is.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
And we've got all sorts of instruments.
That's
that
my
you can
undergrad
check
degree
out.
is in video and audio production, so I'm
Oh.
like quietly nerding out about
Oh.
this. Yeah, I might have to
Yeah.
dust off those skills and go visit that space.
Come on in.
What do you got? He's like,
I have one more.
Sure.
Yeah, do it.
What
Yeah.
recording software?
Say that again.
What recording software?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but yes.
It's either
No.
Pro Tools or Adobe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Pro Tools, that sounds
Okay, there you
right.
go. Yeah.
Because I know that in the video lab, which is right next door to the podcast
There's a
studio,
video lab
There
too?
is a
Oh
video
my gosh,
lab.
see, look at all this. We saved all this for the last
Yeah.
4 minutes.
So yeah, green screen, teleprompters, basically a full-on video production studio with 4 editing bays with whatever the video editing top shelf software
So
is.
if I'm a music producer startup, if I'm a audio production, video production startup, or I'm a podcast startup, or any of these kind of ideas, you have room and the
Yeah.
tools available. I think
Yes.
Will has a question if you want to pass the mic along. I know, look at that. That's right.
Yeah, just a research question. I heard you use the word directory several times, and to me that kind of evokes the memory of like the old school Yahoo hierarchy.
Okay.
I think I said that word wrong. Hierarchy directory.
Sure.
What does that ecosystem look like? Do you have some of those high quality ones that are curated, or?
Yeah, so I think probably when I was saying directory, probably was it Data Axle that we're
I don't remember.
Talking about-
You've used the word like 3 times.
Yeah.
and it's
directory?
just-
I'll just pick one and kind of give the explanation.
Yeah, basically, I guess probably should have just been using the term database.
searchable database.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's super flexible in that you kind of get to select your filters that you want to throw at a particular search. It's not like you're sitting down with the yellow pages and you have to.
With like drawing down links, like
Exactly.
diving deeper down into
Exactly,
a structure.
right.
And
Do those
depending,
exist?
and depending on the database, you can even look at a map view and kind of get a feel for maybe a heat map or where the concentration of some of this stuff is.
Totally.
So you can even search by map in some cases, right, where you can maybe draw your zone or look
Yeah.
at your radius and see and kind of reverse search.
Yeah,
So they're a little bit more interactive, I think. Than that's a great
Yeah.
question.
yeah. So I don't know if I answered it, but great
No,
question.
you did. I just, like Josh, I'm internet old, and I just remember
Yeah,
like those
sure.
old, just nostalgia for those old directories.
Right.
Like every once in a while, I'll open up IRC just for fun.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Internet old's a good term because I've been doing marketing long enough. I started marketing on MySpace, so like you have to keep perspective is reality,
Right.
I guess.
Right.
All right, with that, we're right at the end, so I have room for one more question if anybody has one. I've been feeding you the questions online that we've been getting, just
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
weaving them in. So
Sure.
we've been
Perfect.
answering those.
Awesome.
With that, any other questions? All right, round of applause for Mark. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So, like I said earlier, a couple just programming notes. One, my goal is to have you back at least once a year to just, one, promote the relationship that we've built, but also talk about the resources you have. I think almost every business brew, we get a question related to, where do I go if I don't know where to go? And you tend to be in the audience, so we get that answer.
Right.
But if by having you here, we can just keep those questions to when you're here and we can focus on our other guests, that'd be great. We also have all of the dates booked from now through June for when we'll have Business for Brew. They'll all be here at the Hive in the Spokane Public Library System. So The dates will come out in our email. I might even publish those. We have a LinkedIn page, so we'll get those out and about as well. And then just a round of applause or virtual round of applause for Slab Visuals for providing the streaming and recording this. We make the recordings available. Brew Peddler for providing coffee, and Startup Spokane for just providing space and resources. So we'll do a round of applause for all those.
For all those, yeah.
All right, last parting thought. Anything else?
Last parting thought. So we've got a pretty rocking set of business research tools that I can't say is exclusive to all public libraries, but we've got something really unique going here in Spokane. But also, it's not set in stone. So if there's some resource out there, if you're like, if I just had access to marketingwizard.com, whatever it is, and especially if it's something that you think, wow, that would be really helpful for my business, and it just doesn't, I can't justify the cost. There are enough marketing firms in town that maybe we get everybody in a room,
pull them together,
and say, all right, let's pass the hat, and we'll get this community license that probably not many other communities would have, and then gives our marketing firms an extra leg up. So just kind of plant that seed out there. So
if there's a resource or tool that you want, just come to you, and we'll see what happens.
And I'm pretty agnostic about if it's industry specific. I mean, PitchBook doesn't do a whole lot for, the local coffee shops that are starting up. Usually, venture capital money isn't interested in that. But for the folks that it does hit the target, it hits it really hard.
Excellent. All right, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And with that, we'll call it a day.